It's a trap.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It might be a wonderful trap.
It's a wonderful. Everyone who's hearing this recording, there is a book sale at a library on Gordon Avenue that happens twice a year. This is 2013. If you are hearing this and it's, say, 2040, it's probably still going on. You must go. There's still time. There's still time.
Thank you for that announcement, Daniel Garner.
You're welcome. They owe us money for advertisement.
All right. Well, here we go. I'll start us off and pray, and then we'll get into it. So, dear Lord, thank you for this time we have together, and just pray that you will reveal truth to us and be a part of the conversation. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So the first thing I'm going to do is show you a very quick clip. As I was reading the chapter, it made me think of this comedian, Mike Birbiglia, this little skit he had done on Christian rock. So I just want to show that right quick.
That'd be a privilege.
All right, so I just thought that clip was especially related to the chapter tonight. So, does anybody have anything that jumped out to them? I have plenty of stuff.
I'm just feeling like it's kind of the same conversation again. Ready for fight a little bit?
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
I
I had
think
to make myself read this chapter.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's part. I was thinking the same thing as I was reading. I was like, to a certain degree, we talk about the same thing,
Yeah.
but it's like I feel like we just, it's going deeper and getting the nuance and shaving away those little areas of fat where you're like, oh, okay, things are clearer now.
I'll say another thing. The word preach and preacher and preaching bothers me. Like all the other words better. He says ministry, but I'm like, I've never really seen anybody use that in the current book as much as this chapter. Right?
So you don't like that he used it, or you just don't like the word in
I
general?
don't like the word, and I feel like it's really old-fashioned. I never hear it. And he was like, preaching this, and preaching that, preacher. I'm like, where are you from? Like, it just seems like the tent revival stuff that I don't know. I don't talk much about. Did you guys go to tent revival?
I don't know if I've ever been to a tent revival.
Probably when my grandmother probably took me to something like that.
If I say the word preacher, preaching, there's generally it's part of the joke. Ministry, or
Right.
It's a denominational thing. Great.
I guess.
In the South, it's preacher.
Yeah. So I was raised in Southern Baptist, and so I haven't heard it since then. Yeah.
Oh, so you mean like that?
Like hellfire and brimstone preaching.
Oh, well, I think. So you mean preacher as opposed to like pastor or minister
Yeah.
or father? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you just meant, because I mean, like the Bible uses the word preach.
Yeah.
So I thought you just meant in general.
I have negative connotations with that.
Right.
And it is totally from the Southern Baptist.
I mean, I think I think this guy's a black guy. I haven't seen the picture, but I mean, I think he's a black guy. That's the thing. That's the vibe I got from him. So I mean, yeah,
Where's
definitely.
the Green Bear?
Well,
Uh-huh.
we had to go to Mr. Potato Head because the Green Bear was
Quit throwing that thing at me.
the Green Bear was out, and then somebody moved it or something. So we got Mr. Potato Head or Mrs. Potato Head. No, we're inclusive here. Yeah, well, I think yes, particularly in black churches, you either call him pastor or
Preacher.
preacher. Preacher. That's like
Yeah.
one of the.
But you don't think of that as kind of a joke in old fashioned? No, it's just me.
I guess it depends on where you come from.
Minister.
I mean, I think like to understand it's partially denominational. I think it's partially like race too. Because I forgot who I was talking to. Oh yeah, my friend was working with somebody, and he said that the guy told him, when you it's okay that you call me by my first name here, but if you're in front of my congregation, I need you to call me like pastor, because that's like a big deal. It's like the big respect thing. If you're a Pastor Johnson, the congregation needs to know that, especially in the black church, because it's like a high office to be the preacher. Because I mean, if you think about the word minister, I mean, other people when they hear that word, they don't necessarily think of the preacher as a person, they think of it as like a verb, like, oh, he really ministered to me.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, there's definitely a lot of different meanings that different people get from how the word is used. But it's interesting. Back to our discussion on words. Well, I'll start off with some stuff that I had. I think, after watching that skit, it sparked my memory to play that Mike Birbiglia thing. Just the way he set up his bit where he said, I'm just listening to the radio and it sounds like any other kind of acoustic song, and the guy's talking about waking up in the morning and I got some oatmeal. And then, it jumps to the chorus and it's like really religious. And he's like, well, what happened to the oatmeal?
Yeah.
So that's what he brought up on, where's that page? I think it's... He starts off on the first page and then goes to 48, basically saying, if you don't subscribe to this particularly narrow lyrical content, then you're not a Christian, and your art is not solidified as a Christian. I like what he said later on 56, where he says, I've had people who wrote lyrics. I've known musicians who haven't supplied the correct number of references to Jesus to receive letters beginning, "Dear former brother in Christ."
Yeah.
But yeah, something I was thinking about last week related to this topic was going back to hip hop. I remember reading an article, and the guy said they were performing in church, the whole group of them, and they were a few sentences into the song, and then the preacher got up on stage and had the people cut the music. It was just like, I'm sorry, we just don't do that here, and just that kind of spirit of, going back to what I said, there's only one type of right Christian music. And, he was probably afraid of the sound of the music more than anything, without even listening to the content. And it made me think about what Cristina brought up last week about, we were talking a lot about the generations of older Christians and younger Christians, and how the younger Christians are typically more open to everything as far as style and genre, and the older Christians may have not been exposed to everything, so they're more focused on just what's considered like the gospel sounding or the Christian sound. So I was thinking about that, and just the kind of I guess like the self-righteousness that comes along with that, where you feel like I can't be open to these other styles of music because this particular Christian sound is God's way. And so then you have people of the younger generation who are not Christians, who don't listen to that style of music, one, because they don't believe in Christianity, and two, they just don't like the aesthetic of the music. So that self-righteousness is like hindering people from hearing things that they might otherwise hear, because you have this like self-prescribed, you have this self-righteousness about you that makes you feel like your way is right. So then it just got me thinking about, I was thinking about this morning, it's like, what he says over and over, when are we going to get to the point where we say, okay, is Jesus the part, is he Lord over certain parts of our lives or all of it? So if he's over all of it, then we have to also say, okay, God, I know this is what I think is the right way, but what do you actually think? It's like people get into a point where they're thinking their idea of what they think God wants is more important than what God actually wants. So you can have a wife and you can be like, oh, women love roses. Here you go. And she's like, I don't like roses. I like daffodils. But here's your roses. Women like roses, right? And your wife's just like, yeah, a lot of women, but I like daffodils. And you just keep trying to give her roses over and over. And she's like, this is not who I am. This is like your idea of who I am. Please buy me what I ask you to buy if you really want to make me happy.
Yeah, I have a question. I'll get the potato head there again.
It's like hot potatoes.
Just a quick one. How traumatizing for those guys, those performers, for the preacher to get up. I mean, I wonder if that perhaps falls in line with where Paul's writing and says, don't make a big deal out of the food you're eating if it's going to cause your brothers to stumble or unnecessary, arguments and things like that. Getting up to save the kids when in fact that might be something that it takes them a very long time to forget about. I mean, it makes them not want to go to church anymore. Second, to me, if you truly believe that that's not a good form of music, then where were you all of the years and months before they got up on stage to, convince them that they should be doing something else? It's sort of, that reminds me, which I think this can go in a lot of directions. When the football game begins, it's not a very good time to teach the player how to catch a ball. You should have been doing it during practice. In fact, if you run up and then say, this is how you catch the ball, all you do is make them feel bad, because you're reacting probably to when after they dropped a ball, and now they're nervous, and now they're overthinking it, and they'll probably perform worse. That's not the time to coach. And two, if you as a preacher would spend all that time convincing them of a better form of music, and at the end of the day they didn't move to a different form of music, then you would stop and ask, well, maybe I wasn't right. You would say, that didn't work. I wonder why. And you would start to examine the issue. Third thing I was going to ask, I wonder, what form of music is there for the black youth other than, hip hop? If you're running a black
and
church,
gospel.
And you got gospel,
Jazz.
I was going to say jazz. Motown,
Me?
Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles. For whites, I guess you have country would be. Although there's a really good black singer. I can't think of his name.
It was with Hootie and the Blowfish.
Adele. Yeah. Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know. Darius Rucker. He's a good
He used to be
singer.
with Hootie and the Blowfish.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. You didn't know that?
Daniel.
I'm sorry.
He's young and
Sorry,
do that.
he's a good singer. But really, there's kind of a way in which there's not really a lot of options for the black youth, or that things that you can listen to without thinking of yourself as listening to, white music, I guess, as whites think they're listening to black music if you listen to hip-hop or whatever. So that seems to me to be putting the black youth in quite a difficult situation when you're sort of saying this form of music is evil. No one is saying to the whites country is evil. Right? No one is doing that. No one's putting you in that similar situation. So I don't know. Is that a dilemma that you found yourself in? But you appreciate all forms of music.
Yeah, I like all types of music, but yeah, when you get over into that particular genre, like I said, I think I talked about this last week, there's already this, whoa, that's violent and that's filled with this, so let's just throw it all away because we can't redeem any of that. It's like, maybe you were talking about this. I think you mentioned, it's just the fact that, I forgot what the point was that you made.
If it was a good point, you'll remember.
But just the idea that that type of music is usually written off before it can even get a chance. So I feel like outside of the church context, hip hop, people are already like, oh, let's make sure we have our hand right on the dial, because there's been many times when I wanted to perform and people already they haven't even heard what I said. And they're like, this is going to be violent, right? This is going to be. I was like, have you even heard anything that I'm going to say? No, it's just automatically rejected. We don't want to get into that. We're safer if we just shut it down.
that doesn't happen a lot, does it? Yeah.
It happened to me plenty of times. It happened to me in high school.
I've seen it happen
Happened to me
a
in
lot.
college.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I called. There was a talent show in the dorms, and I called the girl who was organizing. I was like, "Yeah, I saw the talent show flyer. I was really interested." She's like, "Great." She's like, "So what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I play the piano, but I also rap, so I'm trying to decide."
Well, you said rap.
It doesn't.
And also I play violent music. And then I was shocked when she said you play violent music. You don't think rap is violent music? You called it, I'm sorry.
I don't think rap is
Oh,
rap is an
come
art form.
on.
Inherently violent.
I just
Nothing
think
is
of
fair.
name me 3 rap songs where they're like, how much, like a country or a good old country or Christian song, how much I love my wife and my dog. And give me a rap song that's all about how much I love my wife. They're
Tupac, Dear Mama.
How much you love your wife is that? Even when they love even when it's like that, it's still like, oh, I'm gonna say it with like violence, whatever. I hate rap. I'm just saying.
All right, well, I'm going to play you.
But I think that
I'm just saying.
I guess that though, if there is this sense of, gosh, why isn't there more rap that talks about good things? That I think, for me personally, I don't see that as a like rap sucks. It should just not exist. It's more like rap has potential to be a place where there could be people speaking good messages through it. You know, I don't know. I guess I also like. I don't necessarily listen to a lot of rap, but I like the lyricism. I like the ability to like make an art out of it, you know, and I like the beat of it. So, to me, I see it more as like there's potential there.
All the music has a good and a bad. Country, like a significant portion of the country is about drinking and a party at a bar and getting laid and stuff. And I mean, there's a Christian hip hop. I mean, you can't really argue with the themes of that. This whole class has been about art is about truth as opposed to like a preconceived. You know, there's no a genre of music that is Christian or worship. I mean, all art is supposed to be worship.
And yeah, like the rap y'all did last Thursday, that was great. You know, I think there's lots of people who do the raps. I think, unfortunately, I think since culturally it's expected that rap is violent, therefore what people who market and promote rap do is that's the kind of music they tend to distribute. And unfortunately, what tends to sell is what fits people's preconceived notions. Therefore, that sells well. So then you get a self-feeding cycle that's very difficult to break. I think online and on YouTube and things, now it's happening where forms of rap, forms of hip-hop are getting out that don't fall into that preset complex, and I think that's very good, and I think that will grow and continue to be the
hip hop
case.
is the same. I mean, like house music or dance, like that. I like that, and it isn't just rap. Any music. I used to date a heavy metal guy. Any music that I feel like is boom, but just really. Then I like melodies.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
I was married to a jazz musician. I'm like, they are all playing a different song. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and
can we have a melody?
yeah, and two more things to say. It's interesting when country songs are about getting laid and drinking and things. It's more like this bumbling kind of oh, can't help it, just Friday night. But there's a way in which when rap does it, because of the nature of the beat, it's like very intentional. It feels very Elizabeth, hello, beautiful. There's this very intentional sort of when rap, because of the way the beat is in rap, it's very intentional.
This is Elizabeth. She's
Hi, beautiful.
Hi.
How are you doing? That is the tape. How are you? You well?
Yeah.
Good. Wonderful. Because of the nature of the beat, there's more of a feeling of intentionality that is associated with it. While in other forms of music, just because of the rate of the beat or the kind of instruments involved, there's more of a feeling of bumbling sort of going.
If you were
into
yelling at me, though, I couldn't even hear what you were saying. I would shut down.
Right.
You start screaming at me.
That was a terrible throw.
It's really broader than just, I shouldn't be specific, like one thing, like, I hate that.
Right.
Like, I can't listen when you yell.
Right.
So that goes with
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said. I mean, I don't know if you listened to last week's recording, because
No, I did not.
Because I basically started off with the idea that
I was here for it. Wasn't I here for the last part? I was like here for the last hour.
Really good book.
I'm not. I can't remember. All right.
But I basically talked about how rap, hip hop. First, or you said
Oh, no, I
rap.
took a babysitting job.
Yeah, rap and hip hop. I mean, that's one thing right there. Is that when hip hop was first started, people knew hip hop as breakdancing, rap, graffiti, DJ, So it's like 4 elements as a culture. Now the thing that kind of has lasted in the mainstream is rap as the vocal delivery of words. So when people say both words, it's kind of interchangeable, but to some people when they say hip hop, they think of a whole
Different
movement of culture. So yeah, I would say that like there's actually a Christian rapper who has a song called I think it's called like Rap or Hip Hop, and he goes through this whole thing. It's like, is it rap or is it hip hop? I like hip hop; it has more of a zing to it. And I would argue that when you say rap, people most of the time go, but when you say hip hop, it's kind of like, oh, it's like the Brady.
It's poppy.
It's like the Brady Bunch movie. The first or the second one, Marsha, she's on a date with a guy, and she's like, so what kind of music do you like? He's like, I'm really into hip hop. She's like, hip hop? That sounds like music a rabbit would listen to.
Yeah.
So yeah, because it has the term hip. Oh, I mean she's a ditz, but yeah, because the word itself, like our whole discussion on meaning of words, the word itself kind of sounds light and hip hop. Oh yeah, I could dance to that. So that's one thing. I think second.
Does that mean get your hip to jump out of the chair? So you get on your feet and dance? Hip hop!
I want you to admit that you're not that surprised that somebody thought when you
I'm
said
not
you were going to play
surprised.
rap. Okay, good.
I'm not surprised. I just am surprised. I'm just like rejected all the time. I mean, think about it. What if I said to you, and you came to me and said I'm a makeup artist, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you do like horror movies? What's wrong with you? It's like something that you consider very personal to you, like the person immediately like rejects it because they associate it with something else. So it's like, first of all, it's like disrespectful to that individual because you're basically saying, oh, you're violent. Like, I just called you on the phone for the first time ever, and you're telling me that what I'm going to do at this talent show is violent? You don't even know who I am.
Sounds like piano and rap is so weird.
Well, I didn't say I was going to do them both at the same
okay.
time. I said I play the piano, but I was also thinking about rapping because I do rap. And her first thing was like, oh, rap, is this going to be offensive? I was like, yeah, it's going to be very offensive. That's my whole goal, is to be offensive.
I think, too, with that, though, what gets tied up is they're afraid if you come and you do rap and you do say something violent, that's going to make people dismiss their show, therefore dismiss them. So it's tied up in their own fear of having their identity and their production negatively judged because of something you do. And they're just like, well, if I don't let him perform, no one's going to know. And if I do let him perform, it's a risk. So when they weigh that cost-benefit analysis, then they just go on and say, no, that's not right, but that tends to be what happens. The second thing I was going to ask, as we were saying that rap, I dare hip-hop / what have you, is thrown out as innately bad, as we were saying. Is there a white form? I guess rock. Is rock? Do you think rock is thrown out as innately bad as much as rap / hip-hop is thrown out as innately bad through the culture? No, I don't think so either.
Metal would be the way.
Metal, you see, and that's another distinction now, like the metal between rock and metal, which I guess that's more of a 90s distinction or something, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I brought this up last time, I wish you guys were here for some of you guys were here for the last one, because I played this song by the band Tool, and it's I don't think they consider themselves metal. But basically, he was singing this song in German, and it had like a kind of industrial beat to it. And so the whole song was a recipe for making muffins. But because it was in German, he knew that people were going to automatically assume that, oh, this is violent and this Nazism. And it's just like, no, it's just cupcakes or cookies. But the people listening are not going to take the time enough to go and read the lyrics and be like, oh, I see.
Translate them and be
They just, oh, that sounds bad, I'm going to turn it off. So I would say, metal... Because metal is automatically assumed with Satanism. It's like hip.
Is it really?
Yeah, because there are a lot of metal bands that are.
Or they dress like they are.
Yeah, they're goth or they do satanic things. So then, if you're a metal band, you're automatically considered Satanism. Like the two get intertwined.
Do you still have metal bands?
Yeah,
old guys from the last decade.
I mean, there's even Christian metal bands.
There's new metal bands.
Yeah.
Well, don't listen to this radio.
So
Screamo, is that still a thing?
Screamo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
certainly
There's Christian Screamo.
What?
it's Christian everything.
That's popular.
There's Christian Screamo.
That's too much.
But I mean, I think
Or 20.
what happens with metal happens with hip hop. It's like hip hop You can't separate hip hop and violence, and you can't separate metal and Satanism. So when you try to introduce these art forms to people, they automatically reject them because they're afraid that they're accepting violence or they're accepting Satanism. I think also, yeah, like what you were saying, that's what another thing I brought up last week was like the beat itself. Because hip hop is loud and metal is loud, that's automatically assumed as a negative.
But hard loud.
I don't know, but I mean,
Just loud. Mary had a little lamb.
but just because just because something is loud doesn't mean it's bad.
You don't see a hard loud versus a soft loud. You can play Mary Had a Little Lamb really loud, and it still wouldn't bruise my brain.
But that's the thing we're talking about. There's like different styles for everybody. Like the other example I use is like, okay, let's say you wanted to have a night of peaceful bliss. So you go to Carnegie Hall Symphony, they're playing Mary Had a Little Lamb. But let's say you don't like classical music.
All right.
You're going to be miserable.
I'm probably not going to go.
Yeah, I mean, but no, let's say you went there. You went on this great date. The guy's like, hey, I got this concert. And then you sit there and they start off Mary Had a Little Lamb. She's like, I hate classical music. You're going to be miserable for 2 hours. So just because it's like peaceful to you, to somebody else, it could be annoying, you know? And to somebody who likes loud music, you may not see it. It may not be peaceful in like the green pastures. But
I don't know what instruments feel heavy or hard. I don't know if it's the drums or I don't know enough about the instruments that they use in rap and hip hop.
I mean, it's mainly the percussion.
It feels like the percussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
It's kick drum.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's something interesting about drums that kind of scares people. Like me and my friend John, we went to the winery that used to be the Kluge winery before it shut down.
It was bought over by Trump.
Yeah. So he worked there, and they had wanted live music. So he said, yeah, you want to play keyboard with me? So I was like, yeah. So I showed up with keyboard, and then I had a djembe drum. And he said, man, when you passed by my manager, she was like, oh my gosh, there's a drum. There's going to be so much noise. Like, patrons are going to be disturbed. Oh, he's got a drum. I was like, are you serious? The drum's causing this much trouble? We haven't even set up anything yet.
Touched it.
So there's something with, like, I don't know, people are afraid of drums and noise. And even
Goodness. I was just going to say in churches, that's a huge debate. The Christian.
Should there be drums or
should
not?
There be drums? That was
So no, pretty much.
pretty much no.
There
Usually.
you go.
I was thinking about like whether, you know how we were talking about like country versus rap and how in both genres, those are still pretty big recognizable genres, you know. And I think that, what was I going to say? Oh, right. I wonder if the acceptability of its content has something to do with the demographic of who listens to that. Because like if you think about country, yeah, I think I've listened to some country songs lyrics and I'm just like, that's very questionable. Like I'm very confused as to it's confusing why there would be songs that praise things that are bad. But anyways, hello Nicholas. It's Nick.
Hey, beautiful man.
But think about like what's the demographic or where's the location of rap? Well, inner city, often.
Versus country.
And then country is like, it's like Bible Belt. I mean, these are big, huge stereotypes, but at the same time, I think that's what sometimes can make it a little bit more like we accept, like the country isn't seen as, like, well, also because inner city equals like drive-by shootings and, you know, potential, you know, harm and danger, whereas like the country is a little bit more, like you're saying, kind of bumbling, like you almost like if something were to be, even if somebody like shooting somebody were to be talked about in like the country songs, it's kind of like a shootout western, more like somehow it's validated by that.
Well, plus the gun culture there is
well, that's true.
kind of like Americana versus where if you get into hip hop, it's like, oh no, violence.
Well, it's also interesting, I think, in country songs, usually if there's like Whiskey Lullaby, you know, Double Suicide, a very popular song. Usually the debauchery that's depicted in country music is after someone is intoxicated. But sometimes in rap, often in rap, there can be more of an intentional. I knew darn well what I was doing. And I wanted to... Darn well.
I knew darn well.
Darn well. I could have gone, I knew bleep well what I was doing. So there's a way in which, because in the context of the song there's alcohol involved in a drunkenness, they didn't know what they were doing. After, Saturday night, they're going to be on church on Sunday morning.
Right.
There's that kind of idea with it, which then feeds into the Christianity of you can just sin all you want and God will forgive you no matter what, so it doesn't really matter. And that's the Christianity without any sanctification. So I think there's a difference there. Also, I think all of this gets... one of the parts I really like in this chapter is on page 50 when he says, frequently a Christian worldview is interpreted to mean a view of a pressing moral problem broadly accepted by evangelicals. He goes on to say that includes stuff like abortion, or if you're going against pornography, if you're going against, say, gay marriage or something like that. But if you were to listen to a song that's talking about, say, helping the homeless, or since that's all social justice and not broadly accepted by evangelicals, that would not be considered a Christian song. Like he makes the point where if you had a song that was about stopping abortion, it didn't mention Jesus at all, we'd say you would hear that on the Christian radio because that would be a Christian song. But if you had a song that was talking about helping the children in Africa, and it didn't mention Jesus at all, you wouldn't hear that on the Christian radio, even though Jesus says help the downtrodden, because that's social justice. So too, I think this gets into how country more fits into the Christian worldview, which entails a particular kind of theology, which actually is the theology that Harold Bloom calls as I mentioned in another class, the Roman road, which is just the American Christianity of you accept Jesus as Lord and Savior, you're saved, you get your sins forgiven, and that's about it, and then it's going to heaven, stuff like that.
I've got several things. One, there's this great documentary called Beyond Beats and Rhymes. This guy named Byron Hurt. He made the documentary because he said he loves hip-hop, but yet he's conflicted by the messages within hip-hop. So he explores gender, sexuality, homophobia in hip-hop, racism. And it was interesting because there was this one section in the documentary where he was like, why is hip-hop so violent? So he went around asking these rappers who were making records, like popular rappers, like, why is your music so violent? And then one of the rappers said, he's like, do you watch movies? And he was like, good question. So then he did this whole montage of like John Wayne, fast forward to today, billboards objectifying women, fast forward, he's like, hip-hop didn't create misogyny. It's like it didn't create violence. It's like hip-hop is just reflecting what American culture already kind of praises. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that hip-hop gets this bad rap for doing these things when hip-hop's only been around since like late 1970. So I mean, to say that like misogyny and violence and all these things in art all of a sudden came along 30, 40 years ago, that's actually, we should be praising hip-hop. It's like, wow, you guys changed America in less than 40 years? Well, if hip-hop is that strong, then we need to be looking at it for how we can then change the nation if it's that powerful. So that's the first thing. The next one is, like I said last week, hip-hop is a vehicle. Because if you took the same people from hip-hop culture, moved them to Texas, gave them a record deal, had somebody produce a country-style record, they're not going to be talking about 40 ounces and Glocks. They're going to be talking about 6 shooters and whatever the pop.
Solo cup.
Yeah, they're just. It's just the person's character is going to dictate what they do, not the style of music. So if somebody likes to talk about getting drunk all the time and shooting people, you're not going to change them by putting. You can put them in Christian music. They're going to find a way to say what they want to say, with the style of music. The last two things. The other, kind of on Daniel's point about country. This is something I want to do one day. I don't know if it's going to be a movie or a book or whatever, but I always find these interesting parallels between country and hip-hop. And it's what you're talking about, being brought up in a Christian tradition, and then that conflict of not really living it. So you're brought up in the black church, you respect Jesus, you respect going to church, and then every song on your album is not about anything related to that. except for the last song. It's like, this is my Jesus dedicated song. And the same thing in country. It's like, you know, you hear all these songs about going to the bar, let's, you know, all Friday night, but then, you know, it's very much like, but the Lord loves me. There's always that sense of Jesus is in my life, even though I'm doing these things, both in hip hop and country. So I always find that, you know, like what you're saying is interesting about the Christian tradition, that element. And yeah, why? And I mean, like I said, I think I'm gonna have to do a whole nother class on racism, art, and Christianity, because there is something there as to, well, why can we listen to country music and talk about all of the things they talk about, but then once it's in the hip hop song, it's like, well, that's really bad. It's like, what's the difference between, you know, a rapper saying, you know, girl, let's get into bed, and save a horse, ride a cowboy, you know?
George Strait. Have you ever listened to George Strait?
Probably not in
There's
depth.
some really sketchy stuff going on. And it's played at weddings.
Yeah.
And it's really
Oh, yes. Oh, now that you say that, yes. Because it's always so strange to me. That's right.
Yeah.
There's like parts that are, yeah.
Is it
Like
country?
adultery.
Yeah. Now
And
that you
lots
say
of
it.
other
Yeah,
disturbing
people,
things.
yeah.
But yeah, but
At
Yeah,
Christian
yeah,
wedding
yeah.
receptions.
There's a lot of things at Christian weddings.
What's going on?
But think about the hip hop songs. They're always, you know, like shake it, girl, shake your booty. I mean, there's what's his name, Jason Aldean. Shake it for me, girl, shake it for. But I mean, you turn that on the radio. They play it at the UVA soccer games, baseball games. You know, the baseball team at UVA listens to a lot of country music because I had to shoot camera for it. And so, you know, I'll be out there hearing it's like, shake it for me, girl, shake it for me. Kids out there, parents out there.
Country song?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason
Oh,
Aldean.
okay. Sorry.
So what if they try to play Lil Wayne, shake it, or Mystical, shake it, watch yourself. Everybody be like, can we have this turned down, please? It's making me uncomfortable. Yeah. I'm like, really? You just had Jason Aldean said shake it, so why can't we play this?
Well, again, I can't hear you if you're yelling at me. So, so if you want me in particular to hear you, then you have to actually talk to me instead of yell at me, because I don't know what happens to my eardrums when somebody yells.
Right. Well, I'll get
That's
back to
content.
that.
What was that?
Volume and hardness more than content.
Right.
I'm not saying
Well,
you
if you
can't cut
disagree
me
with the
down.
content,
Yeah, I mean, that gets into the music you like. I mean, personally, I do not listen to, say, metal, or I don't listen to a lot of loud music because I don't
That's what
like
I should have said
it.
instead of I hate it, but I
And then it's just a question of, I recognize I don't like it, but does that mean it's inherently bad, and why then do we have these cultural differences and things like that? I think country is associated with a good old country boy, Friday Night Lights, and things like that. If you talk about rap, I associate it with gangs. That's the difference. Country, when I hear all that, I say, oh, that all of the negative content is the exception to the norm. However, when I hear hip-hop or rap, the negative content is the norm. And when it's about, say, your love life and stuff, other things, that's the exception. That's the difference, I think, in the cultural context. Now, if you look at the actual per capita content, then you would see that actually the vulgarity of country music is very common. But there's still something in our cultural consciousness, or at least in the South, I shouldn't talk for all of America, in which views that as the exception. I also think, too, that a lot of country music is popular because there's baby boomers who are trying to find a music that reminds them of like Doobie Brothers, Leonard Skinner, sort of 70s rock, and that's the closest they can come to it, other than a vinyl radio station. So there's kind of, I think a lot of, I don't know, but I think a lot of like my parents' generation doesn't really like so much the country they play now, but they listen to it because that's as close as they can get.
Right.
I have a question. I might have already missed this, but it seems to me that we're talking about mainstream only of these two.
Of the
Of
genre.
country and rap. Is that?
Well, not necessarily. This wasn't even supposed to be tonight's discussion, but it's good, so we're going with it. I started off by saying that there was a Christian rap group who got up at a church, performed. Within a few sentences, they were cut, and the pastor said, "We don't do that here."
Oh, okay.
So then so now we're just kind of spawning off into
But
all of
for
it.
this discussion and what it came to, are we talking about mainstream country and rap?
Well, I think the reason why it may be leaning toward mainstream is because that's what's most recognized and what will have most influence on the culture. But it can be any, like, you know, we can bring up anything. Like, it's just that it won't necessarily be as like what's most influential is what's mainstream. You know, and we're thinking about like culture making and how art makes culture, and like therefore how does Christianity have an influence through art to affect culture. So yeah, that's
Yeah, just wanted to clarify.
yeah, sure. Sorry for the long-winded explanation.
No, it's okay.
That was Mr. Hankins.
So I want to respond to your point. So I think like Daniel said, you know, if something is loud, that comes down to your personal preference, and like, and I just don't like music that loud.
Right.
But I think also this goes back to my other favorite topic, which is art literacy, which is we live in a time now where you're not really expected to know what is a good movie and what are the parts of a good movie and what is good acting and what is a good song and what is good songwriting. So like for me especially, like when I hear people talk about hip hop who may have never really experienced it, when they say, oh, people are just like talking over the beat. You know, it's like, well, let's see you try it for a second and see how easy it is. So, you know, I don't think to call it yelling is necessarily accurate. So I think, you know, you have to really sit down and see what is done with the music itself to be like, oh, okay, I see what's going on.
I did like 8 Mile. That's interesting, right? That was good. There's this nice story, kind of a melody going on.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand. Like my mom, she doesn't like hip hop. But it's interesting what she does and doesn't like sometimes. Overall, I would say she doesn't like hip hop. She's like, boy, I don't want to hear all that thumping and bumping in my car.
But thank you.
But you know, I'll listen to some of the same music that she listens to. But sometimes she will like something with the beat, but maybe because it has more of a melody. No, we have this ongoing. Okay, do you guys remember the group CNC Music Factory? They had everybody dance now. Okay, that was them.
Okay.
So the guy who raps in there, she loves him. She's like, oh, Freedom Williams, he's the best rapper ever. I'm like, Mom, this guy raps on this one album. He doesn't have any other albums released, but she thinks he's the greatest rapper alive. She's like, I was like, you know, he had a solo CD. She's like, ooh, really? I need to get that. And I'm just like, no, you don't. You really do not. So it's interesting that she will listen to that. Maybe also it's like you're saying, because to her it has like the dun 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 dun, because it has. So yeah, if you like hip hop,
Like melody.
and see, this is, you can't even say this because there's hip hop now that if you listen to it, there's melody, there's like vocalist on the chorus. But yeah, there is some hip hop that has the loop or the repetitive, you know, and that's just part of the makeup of that particular genre of music, what makes it what it is. So, you know, yeah, if you don't like it, you're just not going to like it. But I think, you know, we all have to kind of expand ourselves to realize, okay, what does this genre of music do? And how does it operate, and what are the functions of it, and what are the particular parts, so we can understand it, and then even if you don't like it, like just be accepting of it. I mean, that's all I would want from my mom, to be like, I don't get it, but I know you like it, so I will at least try to listen to a song or two to see where you're coming from, you know, especially if you're going to, you know, if we're bringing this into the Christian context, you know, if your kid really likes a style of music, you don't have to listen to it. But if you're going to like relate to that kid, how else are you going to do it? They're not listening to Michael W. Smith, you know, or Stevens Curtis Chapman or Hill songs. That stuff is boring to them, you know. Just as much as the loud thump to you is like this, to them they're like, oh my gosh, Hill songs. If I hear another, you know, G, C, D chord, I'm gonna.
I appreciate that a lot. It's just music appreciation. Did anyone else have to take that in high school? Yeah, so even if you don't like something in any art form, I think appreciation and understanding is key to relating to other people and to having a better understanding. So I appreciate you saying that. So that's all.
Actually, I'm going to pass it back to Bernard, but I do want to say something really quick. I want to say it through the potato head. So, I don't know. I think that, well, this just goes back to, okay, so I think it's interesting when we talk about music in terms of entertainment, because this goes back to something you were saying about, like, like hip-hop brings attention to the things that are already happening in the world. It's like, just read the news and be horrified. I mean, you can read the news and read about something awful, and they just happen to maybe bring it up in their songs. I think the fact, though, that there might be a sense of being entertained by it that is perplexing. But that goes for any genre of music. It doesn't just go for rap. You name it, TV, movies, like songs, anything, like the news itself. There's kind of like you're talking about today about, like, well, I won't say it if you want to say it, but anyways, entertainment. So I think there might be something troubling about when it becomes something you just like listen to have a good time, which might be, I don't know, it starts to call into question like the integrity of that artist. I won't say that art form, though, because it could be used in different ways.
Yeah, to that, we're entertained when we watch Mel Gibson. Bruce Willis gunned down a lot of people in the movie. Most of our entertainment is very violent and absolutely terrible. Yet it's as if the loud beat makes us realize how terrible it is. Like when we watch a terrible movie, we don't think about it. We're like, shoot them down. It's just a shootout. But there almost seems to be a kind of discrimination against the amount of words per second, like that style of doing the art form that wakes us up to the horror of it. 2 points. One, I wonder if there's a way in which I would say that the hip-hop and rap assimilated prevalently more of this delinquent activity than other art forms. But there's a way in which, because of where a lot of your black culture is growing up in, you're dealing with that every single day. And there's a way in which then turning around and saying, you know what, we're going to just own this. We're going to say we're joining these gangs by choice. That's a way to restore a little bit of power, rather than we're just sucked into it and we don't have a choice. Also, if your women are getting sucked into unfortunate sexual industries and things like that, well, we're going to own it. We're going to be on the dance floor. And that's actually one of the ways that we can stand up against this plight that we're in, is by owning it and saying that we want it. Which is a kind of existential reaction. I wonder if that has played into it. But I'm not saying that therefore makes it, as we've been saying, all the musics have engaged in this. But I think there's something interesting going on there. 2, I think the complete, absolute wrong. We were just talking a moment ago about the necessity of music appreciation. There are, churches today that are starting to have rock and roll and rap and things. That's why I really like what he talks about on page 48. A lot of churches are trying to be relevant. This is a very important line. Success is gauged not in terms of critical appreciation, but in souls saved. How good a song is, how good a piece of art is. We'll accept that form of art as good if it gets people saved. And so then he proceeds to talk about how it's good to have Christian rock stars, because a lot of kids like rock. So if we can get Christians to use rock and get people saved, therefore rock is good. But notice they're accepting rock and roll not because they appreciate the music, but because it's a vehicle of evangelism. Right. That seems to be falling into a ditch on the other side of the road, where you're now beginning to accept the music, but you're doing it as a means to an end, not as an end in itself. So I think one could say that, everything we're talking about is getting better. The Christian church is starting to accept things, but they're actually accepting them not the art forms as an end in themselves. I think that logic applies to all the art forms. Painting, a lot of churches are starting to accept and have galleries. There's this relevant movement, but it's not because we're more knowledgeable about arts. It's not because we're becoming more willing to explore different art forms, but because we think we can use that power for evangelism.
And there's nothing wrong necessarily with it being used for evangelism or like with that hope or something, but like that's still going to leave the person who likes to write rap and make rap and sing rap and listen to rap, as soon as it's like, okay, yeah, oh cool, like we both do rap, but like, oh wait, but you're not, you're using rap for bad things, and we're trying to use rap for good things, so we still can't talk. You know, I mean, obviously that's kind of like overblown and a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's still going to leave the two in like, it's kind of in two camps. Instead of being like, we really like the art form, we really love, you know, lyrical dancing. So now we're going to really like connect on that level. And then it's like, and wow, I see what that person's doing and how that brings them life. My lyrical dancing seems to only bring me back to like my void or this void, right? And then like you can have that sense of, oh, I see, like they're doing it because they feel closer to wholeness in doing that art form. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, what happens is the relevant problem sets up artists to go through the, like you mentioned earlier, dear former brother in Christ, when they don't have enough words in their songs. Also, it sets up artists to feel a whole lot of pain when they think they're being accepted for the art that they do, and then they're put into a particular box or made to feel that they're being held up to the standard of where you need to be. Hey, Rachel. Need to be saving people, and then when they're not doing it and they're rejected because of it, it will cause a lot of deep pain. Here it goes. That's good.
I wanted to mention something that your comment made me think of. I spent summers with my dad, and my dad is a part of a predominantly African American inner city, funky, fun church that on Friday nights would have open mics and rapping and hip-hop. And that's when I discovered that I really liked rap and hip-hop. And I learned a lot about it, and I saw that it was something that could glorify God. And the church wasn't doing it in, I think, the way that you're describing it, not to be relevant, but because this was the rhythm of life and the song of these people.
Right.
And I became a part of that. And that was authentic, and that was great. So I think that it is happening.
Oh, I don't mean to say the whole church. I think it's definitely happening, but I think there are a lot of churches out there who it's not their way of life. They don't embrace it. They see it as a means to an end, not as their identity.
Yeah, and I know you weren't saying that no place exists, but I just wanted to share that because I think it's encouraging, and I think it's great because I don't think I would have been introduced to that otherwise by such a wonderful group. Yeah. So I love rap and hip hop. I like the content to be right, which I think is harder to find, but yeah, I'm thankful for that experience. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, like I said, it's going to take a much larger class to like really focus on the hip hop and racism in America and art. And I think, like, honestly, that's like a work only the Holy Spirit is going to be able to do, because it's just so deep, the kind of like initial rejection of the art form that happens, that people, I mean, Christians and non-Christians alike are afraid of hip hop to a certain degree. Something you were just saying, maybe. Oh yeah, and back to what I said last week. The Bible talks about in Revelation, like every nation, tribe, tongue will be represented. And so to me, that speaks of God has created all types of people, and each person has an expression that is like native to them. And to kind of like say, oh, well, you're not allowed to do that, is like in one sense just to straight out write off an entire kind of section of people, saying, well, we know you guys express yourself that way, but not here. Just. Imagine being really good at something and being told, well, you're not allowed to do that because we don't get it. So I think, that's another thing to consider, just from a biblical perspective, that, God has made room for all types of creation, no matter how weird there's all types of music out there. Sometimes I listen to them, like, God is a strange guy. Like, just like people just doing weird stuff, plugging, guitars in weird ways, or, like I remember I took a music appreciation class at UVA, and they would have us listen to this guy, and I'm like, and I'm just like, oh my gosh! Like I could listen to it for the class to understand that it existed, but like you're saying, I couldn't listen to that for hours and just like, but somebody over there in another country's going, oh yeah, oh. Yeah. It's like I mentioned a documentary the other week, George Harrison and the Immaterial World, about the Beatles. And so they had this guy, Ravi Shankar. I think he just recently died. He played the sitar. So he was.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah, it's really good. It's
Yeah.
like 3 parts.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess he became really good friends with George Harrison. And so, like, I think it was Ringo. Yeah, Ringo, they were interviewing him. He said, yeah, we were all at Ravi's house. And, you know, he was playing on the sitar. And all of his friends were sitting and they were going, oh, oh. Oh, he said, and we thought they were going like, oh, this is horrible. He said, but no, they were going, oh, oh. You know, from that American perspective, you know, they thought they were being, you know, they were miserable listening to it, but they didn't you know, then once they realized like that to them is what was beautiful. And to your point on the identity, I think, I mean, hip hop aside, just in general, I think when we get into the area of identity, the thing I always say is like people would rather have a destructive identity than no identity at all. So yeah, once you find that thing, even if it's the worst thing in the world, it's like, well, at least I got something, and so you fully embrace that. So that's why it's important to have truth. And you know, I would say, you know, from a Christian perspective, you know, we shouldn't be looking at these symptoms or these like exterior things. It's like, oh, well, hip-hop music, it seems so violent. The question is, why are the people who are saying these things? Like, they should be going into the people and be like, why are you talking about these things the way you are? You know, if we're going to talk about bringing love and truth into that context, you know, we can't look, it's like, you know, it's like, I can't think of the good analogy right now, but it's just, you know, it's looking at the package of something and not the, you know, the contents of it and being like, why is this thing poorly wrapped? It's like, well, why is the stuff inside not worth anything to begin with, you know? What's the point of commenting on the package if even the contents aren't any good? So yeah, now we'll kind of, we've talked a lot about that. It was a good discussion. So I wanted to bridge on Daniel's bringing up of this cultural relevance point, which I think is a good thing to talk about. And I'll throw out what I think, and then we'll keep it going. I think there's interesting attitude in Christianity towards arts. One, I remember watching a guy on TV, and they had this big choir, you know, traditional sounding kind of Christian type music. And, you know, to me, it wasn't necessarily moving. I was like, okay, that's, you know, that's what they're singing. But this other guy, he's like, man, I'm just so impressed how you guys use the arts and creativity to, you know, promote the gospel. And he was saying it with this sense of like, wow, you know, it's like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. It's not like it's innovation, you know, it's like, yes, you should be doing that. So I think that's one attitude that, you know, as Christians, we have to get out of our system, that somehow when we're doing something creative, like, wow, you guys are really stepping it up. It's like, no, everybody else is already doing this. We're supposed to be on the same level, if not better, you know, putting stuff out there. But I think the other thing when it comes to the relevance issue, I think the thing that many Christians fear is that by saying that you are relevant, it is saying you are synonymous with the world, right? Because you have to then do the things that the world does in order to be liked by them, which I don't think is the case. I think you just have to look at it and study it well enough to understand. Well, let me give an example first. I think that, for instance, if I were to, well, I got to think about the example. I know this example that I already came with. Relevance. Was it relevance? If you are, okay, for instance, when we talk about quality of craft, if I say something like, you know, people in the world, they look at the exterior. That's just the way it is. People who are, I mean, even Christians, we look at the exterior first. It's not like we have some kind of monopoly on, you know, I can see the inside of your heart. No, I see Nick, I see his face. You know, it's just face value. That's what I get until I talk to him. Even more so, people who are not believers, that's the world they live. They're very sensory oriented, you know, and especially when you add on top of the layer where you're taught in school, everything is logical, it's rational, it's reasonable, empirical evidence. So you're just adding layer upon layer of this physical sensory experience where people, the only way that they engage with the world is by the senses. Mm-hmm. So we have to deal with that truth that we are dealing with people who relate on that level. But then I think the fear comes in because people read the verse where God says, don't focus on the temporal, focus on the eternal, don't focus on the seen, focus on the unseen. So people insert that verse right there, and they think that when you say, make something aesthetically good or make a song sound good, that you were saying, focus on worldly things. But I think what needs to be, really carved out is that we're not saying that you cater to what people like so that they like the gospel message. You're just saying that it is a true fact that people deal with the reality of the physical world. So therefore, knowing that they're going to judge the initial package, you need to make that acceptable so that they can then hear the content that comes behind it. So I think, I think the fear that people have is they say, oh, you're saying because people like pop music, you should make it pop and be relevant. It's like, no, you should make pop music because God made all these genres of music, period, and they exist, and use that if that's what your mode of communication is, and do it because it's good, because God would want you to make it excellent. And know that if you have this great message, you should make it aesthetically excellent anyway if you ever want people to ever hear that message. You're not making it aesthetic to please them. You're making it aesthetic first because God, is excellent, and we're in His image, and He does things excellent. And then secondly, you make it aesthetic because if you really do believe in this message, and you know the likelihood that people are not going to listen to it if it's not good, that's even more of a reason, I think, to make it good. If you're going to give somebody a gift, although you could say, oh, it's the thought that counts, I got you this really cool gift inside. I mean, it's kind of really insulting for me to be like, here, Daniel, here's the gift. Oh, sorry. No, I would take the time to make the presentation.
Nice start.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the last thing I'll say, then I'll pass the potato. I mean, I think, when Jesus was saying, who puts new wine in old wineskins? He's like, the content of this wineskin is good, so therefore it deserves a good container. So, the container has to be good, especially if, even more so if the content is good, because you want to protect that content.
First, a lot of this, if it's good art, then you're going to focus on the world, and we need to focus on eternal things. I think it's 20th century, a lot of it comes, it's way more of a problem in Protestantism than Catholicism. It comes from the shadow. Karl Barth would refuse to have any pictures, any windows, anything in his churches. He wouldn't let them look beautiful. We live in that shadow, just modern Gnosticism. It's kind of crazy. Yet, I don't look at my house that's beautiful and say, that's a beautiful house, therefore that's bad because it's making me focus on the earth. We have a double standard. Right. If you're a good doctor and you do a good job, it's like, well, doctor, if you're going to do a good job on patients, people are going to think about being alive and they're going to think about the world, and that's no good. I don't look at a house and I say, well, let's make sure it's ugly. Because if it's not ugly, then I'll think about staying on planet Earth, and that would be bad. There's a double standard. Two, if someone makes a bad house, we don't say, oh, that's okay, it was the effort that counted. We say, that was a terrible house, it's leaking. We have a double standard because the society thinks art is optional. That's what it boils down to. It's not a real thing. We don't, as a society, consider it important. Therefore, we get in all of these. We have to deal with all of these issues, like it has to be overtly Christian versus non-overtly Christian. We don't get mad at the doctor who doesn't tell his patient, seek ye first the kingdom of God when he walks out of the office. But we get mad at the artist if he doesn't reference Jesus somewhere in his book. One of the most beautiful lines in this entire book. Jesus surely didn't make all of his carpentry with a relevant saying, and Paul didn't embroider memory verses on his tents. Page 58. I think that's beautiful. I think, too, what a lot of Christian artists do is they just add it, like I'm getting my oatmeal and Jesus is Lord. It has to fit the logic of the story. It has to fit the logic of the story. Now, a genius writer like a Walker Percy, a Flannery O'Connor, a Dostoevsky, a Tolstoy, they had T.S. Eliot, they had Christian messages that worked within the framework of the piece. But you have to be very skilled to do that, and also you have to have an audience that's very artistically knowledgeable to be able to receive it. And when you don't have either side doing what they're supposed to do because the culture thinks it's optional, it's not really that important, then that's when we fall into this perpetual circus issues that we have to deal with.
I just do art because it's fun. I mean,
Right.
I actually bought something to show you guys.
Oh, not just
But it's just like, I'm like, y'all are so serious. It's wearing me out. Like, is there just, can I just like, I mean, I don't really call myself an artist,
Right.
but I sing, but rather than saying I'm a composer,
Well,
I play piano because it's fun, I paint because it's fun. Want to see some ideas?
Yeah, let's
Yes,
let's look
absolutely.
I
at
used to just say I'm crafty. And they're presents. I give them away. I make them because they're fun. It's
Right.
good, right? For somebody that's not a painter.
Yeah. No, no. He talks about that in here too. He says some of the art. Which page is it on? Page 53, third paragraph. Some art is simply playful. It may be about nothing more than itself.
This kind of thing is so amazing.
Well, thank you.
I've had a couple of things like that in my life, and every time I flip the light on or off, I would think,
That's what they
how
say.
beautiful a picture. It is a great piece of work because it's part of your house.
This is
I make them-
beautiful.
I make them for
Transforms.
presents.
If
This
you have
is
a
really
rental
beautiful.
apartment and it's grungy and stuff, you change that to that. I almost broke into my old house because I had left that there.
I don't blame you. I'm thinking about giving one a double one to the building here.
Beautiful.
That's really pretty, Celia. Thank you. Could I say something really quick?
Well, let me finish this. Oh yeah, so it attempts to tell a story or to make a point. A photographer's eye is caught by the peeling paint on the door of the Mediterranean cottage. A poet toys with combination words that seem both magical and musical. A painter experiments with color and texture with all the joy of a child playing in a mud bath. The sculptor makes a three-dimensional pond. And then he talks about Beck. You know Beck? He said, Beck says, I sculpt words, but they also have to feel good in the melody. Sometimes I put in a line just because it suits the melody. It won't be something that speaks of the emotional core in me, but I can't change it as it goes with the melody so much. You can go for the most expensive crafted shirt in the world, but you're still going to prefer the one that feels good when you wear it. That's what I go for in a song. Ultimately, does it feel good to listen to? So yeah, I mean, no, you're around the most playful people. I mean, that's all I ever talk about is play. That's like my number one message is play.
If I had to sit down and decide whether I was going to paint something Christian, you know what I mean? Like in my head, I
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's one. So I'm glad this came up because I wanted to bring this up. Because I was thinking about, I think one of the reasons that Christians who are artists in the church don't get accepted is because there is this ultra seriousness always attached to Christianity, and there's not much playfulness attached to God's character. And so it's kind of something that Daniel talks about. It's like in our culture, people always talking about, well, once I get a wife and I'll settle down. It's like this idea that you're supposed to stop having fun, that you're supposed to stop doing it. You get married and then the fun is over. Ball and chain kids, and then you're just at work all the time, and then life is yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, there's this attitude.
Then you go to an office.
There's this attitude that
Just to make sure
you're supposed to settle down. You're supposed to get serious. You know, you're not allowed to listen to the type of music that you like anymore. You're supposed to listen to quiet Christian guitars, strums, and you're supposed to put on khaki pants and a collared shirt. No, I think this is what people really think. They think you're supposed to evolve.
Somewhere, I think that's true.
Evolve into this like.
It's in the contract.
Cut out Christian or just adult. Forget Christian. Like you're supposed to just evolve into this nice, quiet. Oh, let me turn down this music now. I know people look at me sometimes when I have my music loud. They're just like roll up their window. You know, oh my gosh, this guy's got his music loud. Doesn't he know he's out in society? You know.
behave you.
No, I am for 100% advocacy of playfulness, and I think some art is just. Blam. I mean, that was my other favorite quote. He
Blam.
said,
That's good.
the Picasso one on 54.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Where I love this one. He says, where it starts on 53 at the very bottom. He said, the flattened out shapes, and talks about God's sense of humor. And then he says, God, Picasso once said, is really only another artist. He invented the giraffe, the elephant, and the cat. He has no real style. He just keeps trying other things. It's like this comedian Gary Goldman. He's like, have you seen like the hippopotamus or the giraffe? He's like, it was like God was on day 6 and was like, this is due tomorrow.
That's really funny. That's really funny.
Good.
So yeah, I mean, God is extremely playful. I mean, you just have to look at the stuff. There was this other comedian. He said, I mean, the fact that comedians exist.
Yes.
But he was like, of all of the pores that exist in your body, and the one pore that God decided for gas to come out was out of your butt. He said, God has to have a sense of humor. And if you don't think so, you're being disrespectful to the Lord. I mean, but just think of all the weird quirk. I mean, look at your body. I mean, seriously, come on. Your body is just weird in a lot of times, a lot of ways. I mean, the stuff around the universe is just weird in some ways. So I'm all about playful. I think what we're saying is, I think that seriousness, when, like what you're saying, like, for me personally, like, I'm serious about play. You know, like, I'm serious about, when I sit at the piano, I'm serious about it, because when it's done, I want it to be, like, fun and playful for other people. So I think what, you know, to kind of bring in your viewpoint is what we're saying is, be serious and intentional and rigorous about doing a good job so that the meaning and the playfulness comes out, versus, we're not just saying, like, make serious Christian art. I mean, I think there's a place for everybody. Like I said, we have, for instance, a girl, Shanna, who performs here a lot, and most of her songs are very, like, upbeat, light, mellow.
Yeah,
ukulele, guitar, and kind of like poppy and fun songs about love. And she has maybe one or two songs that are very, like, introspective about humility. And that's fine. Like, that's the rest of her life. She could probably write maybe, you know, a couple semi-serious songs. And I think that's fine, because we need her side of life. We don't always want to be, like, thinking about, you know, serious things. But then you have somebody like me. I have, like, one playful poem that you've probably heard me perform, and the rest of them are like, you need to have meaning in your life. You need to go to work and love it. And you need to stop talking about artists and how they're not important. And that's fine, too, because you need people like me to be like, bam, 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 bam.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I don't want to be serious all the time, and I don't want to be playful all the time.
Well, really quick, too, I think sometimes there's kind of this sense in which, like, I don't know, to sit and talk about something is somehow like you're overthinking things, you know, and like for some people they don't want to necessarily like sit and talk about something or philosophize or like, you know, but for some people they're like, that is fun, you know, like that is fun to me, like that's engaging, you know, where somebody else is like, not my cup of tea, which is perfectly fine. The other thing I was going to say goes back to like something you said before, so maybe I should pass this over and then I can take it.
What were you going to say?
Well, okay, I'll just say it anyways.
She knows what you're going to say. Is that
That's
what
true, probably.
I mean, we have a Mr. Potato Head. If you can't find
I'm looking at her, I'm like, what is it? Oh, right, the unseen. I think that is interesting, though, because a lot of art, though it does manifest itself in sort of an aesthetic, it comes from the unseen. You know, it comes from a place of ideas, and you know, I think there's something interesting, because like an artist could spend, you know, most of his life. I think about Gaudí, and he lived in his art, and just you know what he made, his architecture, and I mean it was like you could visibly see it, but also like he may not have had much of a like. I guess what I want to say is that he was also existing in his mind when he was working on that. So he was kind of like focusing on the unseen by sort of meditating. And a lot of artists, like especially when, like the believing artists who would paint murals, like, you know, representations of like Mr. Gupta, are like doing this unto God, and could use it as a way to, like, you know, like Cristina talks about a lot, like how her art helps her be in contact with God. So she is fixing her eyes on the unseen. She happens to be making something that's seen too, but it's not like that. It's just kind of about like, where's your disposition, where's your heart at in it.
Yeah, I mean, to that, if you grasp that, then the modern Gnosticism that's divided physical and spirit breaks down, because when Paul says, set your eyes on the unseen, you do so in a physical world that has physical consequences. So that dichotomy breaks down. First, a lot of our author, Walker Percy, in a biography on him, when he writes The Moviegoer, it's joy. It's where great skill is met with fun. That's when a lot of the great masterpieces happen. Now, on the flip side, some of the artists talk about it as agony and torture and things like that. But there's a lot of times where it's like an elation. Like the great works happen when someone really skillful starts having a lot of, like, they're really enjoying what they're doing, and those go together. Second, just a quick point. Ezra Pound says if a nation's literature decline, the nation decays.
What's the matter? Atrophies?
Atrophies. Page 61. I think the same applies to a church. If the church's literature declines or its art declines, it does the same thing.
If the nation's literature declines,
Yeah,
the nation atrophies and decays.
Yeah, the same could be said about the church and a culture in general. Something else you said about pop. Why do you do pop? Well, Flannery O'Connor was asked, "Why do you write?" And she said, "Because I'm good at it." And I think too, it's like, well, I'm good at pop. Yeah, that's why I do it. And that's okay if you get too that if you're really good at it, then the Lord can use that. Back here on page 49, he says, success in preaching is not a simple matter of effective communication. He then talks about how Jonathan Edwards would talk in a very still voice, or D.L. Moody would do stuff that really nothing stood out about their preaching, and yet they transformed thousands of lives because there's the Holy Spirit working. Two, when it comes to your art making a difference for Christ, it's a lot more, and we've talked about this before, we talked a lot in the first class, about how you just do what God's calling you to do. You be there, you be present, believe that the Spirit is going to be working on the hearts of people. As people like Edwards and Moody clearly did. So I think that's a big dimension. And just two quotes that I have really no comments on that I just think are really important. Page 60, where he says, in fact, the criticism of the Pharisees and Sadducees was that he wasn't religious enough. He was too secular. They're talking about Jesus. But the lesson was that God wasn't interested only in the narrow sphere of religious experience. He was concerned with the totality of life and showed his approval by living it. Each time Christ performed a human activity, he was blessing it. This gets into, hi, Shagufta. That's a really cool bandana. You just hang out all you want. We're having our Christian Arts Anonymous class. You sit there and make yourself at home and do whatever you need to. So that gets into, too, how a lot of our discrimination or against hip-hop as Christian or rock gets in... we're being Pharisees, unfortunately. And I think, too, a great quote that helps you overcome making this mistake is then found on page 51, where T-Bone Burnett, speaking to the LA Weekly, said, "If Jesus is the light of the world, there are two kinds of songs you can write. You can write songs about the light, or you can write songs about what you can see from the light." That's what I try to do. That's a really important quote, because that applies to all art and all work and everything that you do. So yes.
Yeah, I think one, going back to playfulness. You made me think of this good quote from the other book I referenced, Addicted to Mediocrity.
That was a good book.
And he said, the church has made art to where it's not spiritual anymore, that it has to be justified with some kind of spiritual meaning. But he said, what is more spiritual in a world where there's a lot of ugliness than to paint beauty? What is more spiritual in a world where there's a lot of children who don't have fathers than to see a father rolling on the floor with his child? So just making the point that there's these trivial things that can be done that are offsetting other things in the world that exist merely just by their nature of what they are. So I like that a lot. Also, this kind of be related to what we talked about last week in regards to Christians making art very overtly because they're afraid that, if this person doesn't see that it's strictly Jesus, then they're not going to see salvation, and they're going to go to hell, and then God's going to blame me, and then it's going to be my fault, and I feel guilty. I also think that's the reason why playfulness is not allowed. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's just in church. I mean, people think playfulness is bad in general. And I think it's partially because if you try to portray a picture of God being playful, people are like, how dare you? This is God omnipotent. He sits on the throne. He would never play. It's like, it's just, we've never really seen an image of playful God. So I'll throw you in a moment. So we never see an image of playful God. So we somehow have not yet gotten that into our mind. So then we think we're being disrespectful because we're showing God as light and He's not serious.
Make a joyful noise.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I honestly don't know why that is, other than just we've never seen that, we've never had that idea of Him, because you have to then question yourself. It's like, okay, if I see God as playful, how does that demean Him? You know, you really have to just follow that thought, because one thing you could say is, well, human beings are playful. So either that's an image of God that He's given to us, or we're somehow doing something extremely wrong, you know, anti His image. Then you also have to, you know, argue the point that to say that we could be playful and God can't be is then to say that some, you know, there's something off limits to Him that we can do. Like, oh, we can play, but God, He would never play. He's like, isn't playfulness fun to you? So you think God is, you know, has fun off limits to Him, and you have access to this fun that He could never have? There's one more thing I want to say about playfulness. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's just something there with that fear element, that if we play or we portray God as playful, somehow we're disrespecting Him and we are denying His omnipotence. That was the thing I was going to say. You know, back to his overall point, we have to then ask ourselves, are we going to believe that Jesus is, you know, over all of our lives, or just part of our lives? So using that same kind of, you know, thought, we have to then ask ourselves, like, as I'm looking at God and I'm looking at playfulness, am I just asserting my idea of what I think God is upon Him? Oh, God would never play. It's like, really? Have you read every scripture to, like, verify this? So if we're just saying that God would never be playful and He would only be serious, then we need to really step back and be like, why do I think that, and where's the truth? Like, where's that scripturally based that God would never be playful?
Well, I just saw a really wonderful piece of art this weekend that was depicting God in a playful way. And it was a father who has raised a second family. And he raised his kids, and then they adopted more kids. And he wrote a children's story, and then recently has illustrated it with watercolors. That's all. I think I ought to invite him to this group and bring that story and share it.
Excellent.
Let me just finish up. I just thought of something. Oh yeah, the other thing I want to say is actually there's plenty of evidence that God is playful, in that there's, how many times does God reference be like a child? Like, be humble. Yeah. Suffer the little children come to imitate God as little children. There's always this essence of being humble, childlike, and, you know, having that youthfulness. And I think it's all related to faith, you know, because as you are humbled, you have to be childlike, and to have childlikeness is to believe and to be, you know, vulnerable and that kind of thing.
I think, you know, fear is a big issue. People are insecure about being playful.
Right.
They don't feel the freedom to express themselves that way, and they think it's weird and unacceptable, which is also not true. But I think there's an insecurity there because we don't see it enough. So when we do see people being totally silly and having a lot of fun, being playful in their art, or just being playful in their demeanor in their lives, you know, we think, oh, that's weird. Why is that person doing that? That makes me feel uncomfortable.
It's true.
But then you get around that person.
I wouldn't do that. I feel like sitting on the bridge and recording a recording of a song into my laptop, but someone might walk by.
Right.
Yeah, it's just like,
I don't want to make them uncomfortable.
You don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. You don't want to be uncomfortable. You don't want to be weird. But something in you wants to express itself in that way.
I mean, problematically, societally, the only understanding of fun and play we have is drunken parties and stuff you do on the weekend. We don't have a very good philosophy of play. Second,
it's only acceptable to
if you're a child.
If we're under the influence.
Yes, exactly. And if you're a child, it's okay because you just don't get the real world yet. Two, with God, we emphasize God resting on the Sabbath. The opposite of work to us is rest, not play. That's the great downfall. We've made the opposite of work rest, rather than rest as what gets you ready for work and play. And then also we've made a dichotomy between those two. That's problematic. In the same way, one of the great downfalls is we've made the opposite of love hate rather than apathy. Because the opposite of love is apathy. We've kind of gotten all that mixed up. No, play is, without play, a human being dies. They have to have play. Because because only the one who has meaning can have play. And play is an indication of having a sense of meaning in life. And if you don't have meaning in life, you wither up. So all of those things get all put together. And this is Western capitalism and stuff like that.
I have a flower for a hair.
Stop playing.
This is serious! Serious! We're working! This is not the weekend! It's Tuesday! It is not after 5 somewhere!
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Thank you for getting us back in line.
Country!
So, I was going to say something. I think that it's really hard. It can sometimes be difficult to not fall in love with. Okay, I think that it sometimes can be hard to not fall in love with the creation over the creator. You know, like it's can be. I think there's a great usefulness in art to bring our minds back to the truths of, you know, beauty, truth, and goodness, like what we know in God. I was at a house just randomly popping by, and they had all these girls live there, and they have all these paintings and scripture written, and it would be more like overt Christian art, right? But at the same time, I was like, that's really pretty. Like seeing that verse with painted with flowers, just really did something for me today. Like the fact that I saw that, I was like, that's so beautiful, and that's what it's saying. It was talking about how we can never be separated from the love of God. And I was like, those flowers, unless, I don't know, they couldn't be separated from that, what they're painted on right now. I don't know. I was just thinking about this. But I guess I'm saying all of this because it's so fascinating how the sensory world and the things that, we can see and feel and experience, especially when it comes to and this is why I think art and love and romance are so connected, because the romance offers a very much of it's think about when you're have a crush or something and you're on cloud 9, everything is more beautiful, everything is so exciting, you're just you want to just freak out. Yeah, freak out all the time. But I think art is. The reason why art is so great is because it can be appreciated, is because it imparts that joy or that spark or that oh yeah, this is why we're living, and right. Now I realize that I'm just ecstatic, and so I think there's this very fine balance. It's a responsibility I think that art has, right, to scratch that, to sort of provoke somebody and incite that ability to see that life is full of that, but not right. To be so I find this so beautiful, you are mine! And then you get it and you're okay, so this wasn't actually, this isn't enough. Right. And it can be really hard to remember that it's not enough. I don't know, does that make any sense? So, thank you for letting me say that.
In the Bible...
really good piece of furniture.
Oh yeah, I could sit on this for
This is no longer beautiful.
Trying to tell me that it's recording.
Yes.
So sorry.
Is it still working?
It's working. This is going to be really loud when you come on.
Oh no, loud noises!
Because you were right over it.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, to that, I think that's the responsibility of the viewer, not the artist. The Bible, I think it's the end of 1 Timothy, says that everything that is created is good if seen by a spirit of thanksgiving. What you're getting into is the desperate need for people to constantly have a spirit of thanksgiving. The only way you're going to see beauty and everything as pointing to God, as if you see it in thank you for that, because thank you points to one that you're thankful for. Yeah. So the spirit of thanksgiving is big. I mean, you can fall in love with a Bible verse over God. You can say, man, I really like that Bible verse, and that comes to be more important to you. The Bible can be more important to you than God. When you forget that the Bible is, when you forget that God is alive, He's a living God who works through the Bible. So I think the spirit of thanksgiving is the key.
Sorry. I guess, too, though, I'm also talking about sort of like the idealism that we give to things. You know, like the like heightened state of emotions.
Yeah, romanticism.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, like romanticism that can be associated with, like, think about, like, I always think about this. I talked with you, Elizabeth, about this. But, you know, kind of like this idea of New York City, you know, and like it's the place where people go and they really try to make it, and there's so much like idealism. Or at least, I don't know, for me personally, as somebody who likes to create and stuff, but like, why is it that it's just so fascinating how all-consuming those feelings can be that are associated with, you know, making art and you know, finding other people who like to make art, and they happen to also be attractive, and you know, like you get like this snowballing effect of like this idealism of what that could be like. And I think there's something really, like, I think what my challenge has often been as being a believer is being able to show that, you know, yes, there's joy, there's beauty, but it's not just here. You know what I mean? Like, or it doesn't just come from it somehow, like, there's something about it that, because it's so consuming, it's more than just what it is, face value. You know, like, it's more, it's something that transcends, and we can't just hold on to the stool or to this thing we love and say, like, that's good. And well, at least I found in my life that it hasn't been sufficient, you know. Or, like, you know, read Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar and how disillusioned she was with being in New York City, you know. So I think I really, I just wanted to say those things. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I can say, I mean, the thing that makes me think of is all human beings project something in a Feuerbach sort of way. You know, he argued that God was just all of human attributes times infinity projected into the beyond. Karl Barth switched that and said all ideas of what human are projected onto us from God. And I think that's the right way. But we have that as the image of God, that ability to project onto something. Oh, you can say, New York's will be happy, so you project that onto it. And then you go and it doesn't match your idea.
I mean,
you can project
great, but it you know,
yeah.
Like, there's a sense in which,
ironically,
who knows?
Ironically, the ones who seem to enjoy, you know, you do it if my husband was perfect, or that preacher is a perfect person, and you do it with anything. Ironically, it's the ones who say, nope, New York isn't perfect. That when they go, have a great time. The ones who say, nope, he's not a perfect man. That then they get it. It's that actual engagement with reality and the truth of imperfection that suddenly makes it to where you really enjoy it. Here you go, Rachel.
This idea of realizing that love is a choice. I went down for a nap. Cello came and lay down next to me and was like squishing my arm. And he seemed so content. So I was like, am I going to get mad at this lump of flesh that just took up my personal space? Or am I going to realize that I'm the one who showed up at his house in the middle of a work day and asked for, you know, to have a nap?
Right.
So this was actually the transition from me being mad about that and deciding that I could take a walk and then writing a song on that walk. That whole story was a creative process. It wasn't me capable of doing that. I would have just remained bitter. Right. Oh, yeah. And I would have thought of other things to be bitter about.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you would have turned around and yelled at Cello for doing that to you, then you would have never wrote that song. And that gets into where if you actually engage and say people aren't perfect, that you suddenly find perfection.
If I hadn't yelled at him like 40 other times, and then this time didn't,
it's a hot potato.
Then I might not have written that song. Just a little fiddle tune.
Yeah, this really is a hot potato because it's so good looking. I mean, it's really great.
The lips especially.
Yeah, the lips really come out. That was really nice. But no, the interesting thing is when you engage the world of what is, you finally find the world that you've always been looking for.
Yeah, I wanted to bring it back to the topic of play.
You like this one.
Play.
I talk about
Isn't it
play.
interesting that word also means like a drama,
Yeah,
like a
play.
play, you know, like a fake sort of scene. It's interesting how we chose that word to mean that too.
Play acting.
Play.
That almost
acting.
sounds like Floyd.
Ploy. Ploy.
But yeah, I think going back to play, one point that I like to make to people is, okay, going back to like what Celia was saying about stuff being ultra serious. To those who showed up later, we had this discussion about the word preach and how it meant different things to different people. We were talking about how a person called a preacher, but some people it's called a minister. And then I said, you think some people use the word minister not as a verb, as a noun, but as a verb. Like, that really ministered to me. So then think about the word ministry. I guess I get kind of annoyed when sometimes people. I guess I get annoyed when people feel like they have to apply that word to everything that is done. So like I'll just be, like I work here and people's like, oh wow, you really have a great ministry over there, and I'm just like, I guess. I don't really think about it as a ministry. It's just like I just do what I do, and if it's a ministry, great. But I don't like wake up in the morning and say, who am I ministering today with my artistic abilities? But I think people like to put a lot of emphasis on that word because it sounds serious, and it's like I said, it sounds like it's of God and it's part of the gospel. So you can't just say, I hang out with artists and I help mentor them, because it has to be.
It has to be legit.
Yeah, it has to be legit.
Socially acceptable.
Yeah. So then the thing I think about,
Fake.
I'm fake. I have a fake ministry. Nobody's lives is getting changed. But the thing I think about is, people they'll talk about Jesus' ministry, like he was on earth, and I think the problem. This goes back to our discussion on the meaning of words. So people say, oh yeah, Jesus' ministry on earth for 33 years. I'm like, okay, well, what is that ministry? Like, they don't really take time to lay it out. Be like, what did he do?
When he was 4.
Yeah, or 4. So what did he do? And it's like, well, he healed the blind, he raised the dead, and the sick and lame he made heal. And it's like, okay, well, what did he do all that stuff for? So they could enjoy life. He came that we could have life and life more abundant. Like, he healed people so they can no longer be sick, so they could enjoy life. He gave them that ability so then they could go and heal people to do the same. But in the end, like, when everything is healed, like, what are we going to do? When God redeems every last part of creation, there's no more sickness, there's no more sadness, there's no more.
You have to worry about that too much.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm saying. That's the point. It's like, once God redeems everything, like, what will happen?
Right.
There's no ministry anymore. Like, he's not going to be going around healing people or making them, out of poverty. It's like, we want to just enjoy life. So, like, the end goal for him having a ministry was to enjoy life ultimately. So I think, taking the emphasis and trying to make that word seem, sound so serious is like, yes, be serious about ministry, serious about getting people well so they can, in the end, enjoy life. The other two things, there's this guy, Daniel's got this book, was it Meister Eckhart or something?
Yeah.
So I saw somebody put it on one of these All Souls.
Eckhart Tolle?
Huh?
Is there another Eckhart or Eckhart Tolle?
I think his first name is Meister.
Meister, he's
Last name Eckhart.
14th century Christian mystic,
Oh, okay.
excommunicated, all the good stuff.
But so somebody made something for All Souls, and on the side of it, it said something about, my Lord told me a joke, and after that, all of Scripture was kind of like nothingness, or something to that degree. It's like, once I got to know God on a personal level, I was like, oh, this dude's pretty funny, All the Scripture, I see what you're saying, but just knowing God and knowing that he has a sense of humor meant a lot. So then this book Daniel got at the book sale last year, this same guy, he had this whole, 2 pages about how God the Father looks at God the Son, and he's eternally playful, and the Son was playful back. And it was just this whole book about God being playful forever, back and forth. And I was like, I've never seen anybody write about God being playful in this it was very serious language too, just the way that he talked about the Trinity, and the fact that, you don't think about God the Father being playful with the Son, but you even have to think about that. Why did God create a Father, Son, image for us to think about. He could have chosen anything else in the world, but he said father, son, and what do you know? Ideally, what would a father and son do? You know, if it's a true relationship, they'd play with one another. They'd be, you know, intimate and kind of joking each other, pushing each other, wrestling around, or what have you. So I think, you know, just bringing back that image of God being playful and lighthearted. And I always tell people this too. I was like, you know, one day we'll get to heaven, and people will be like, okay, God, tell us, why did you create Earth? Tell us what was the whole point of creation. Why did you do it? And his response will be like, because I felt like it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Because I can.
I am.
I wanted to.
I am.
What other reason do I need?
Gotta be
Because
fun.
it made me feel good.
I am.
You know, like what other... He doesn't have any to give you any like, well, because of the deepest parts of this revelation. Like, I felt like it. I was...
Looking over Einstein's theory.
Right. I thought I should do that.
It kills me
Whoa.
that
Nice catch, Lizzie.
thanks, that so many people are so serious to the point that I have to know why God
Right.
created the earth, or did He? And how old is it? And explain to me exactly this, and that.
Right.
And so there isn't life there because I'm so serious I can't even appreciate anything that's going on, and I want answers now. And so you have those people, and it's funny to me, why are some people of that disposition and that answers now or life doesn't matter? Or I can't live because I don't have them. Why are some people that way and then others are like, oh, I don't know. Well, those are the things that we just won't know. There are some questions that don't have answers right now. Let's have a good time. Let's make art. Let's do good work, so on and so forth. Why is there these two groups?
Being one of those serious people, I would like to know that answer too.
Did you know this?
Yeah, I think, yeah. One, the word play, if something is playful, if it brings you joy, anything, you can be picking up square bells. There were times where my brothers would be picking up square bells. So when we get that God is joyful with himself and he's playful with himself, that helps a lot. But unfortunately, we need to say the word play in modern America because the word joy has lost a lot of its meaning. Like when we say God is joyful, we're like, that's abstract. So we have to use play to bring it into the concrete to really change people's preset complexes. I think on the question of seriousness, and I need to know questions now, interestingly, a lot of the individuals who are very much like, I really need to know the answers now, need to know the answers because they want to prove their idea of an answer they already have. Like people who tend to be really adamant about getting answers, it's not so much that they're interested in the answer so much as they are to find out if they're right or wrong, because they want to be right. There's a kind of pride that's mixed into that attitude a lot of times. Because usually if you really are interested in the truth and you just really love it, which means you love God, you're just like, just send the revelation whenever, God, this is great, or I don't really need it because I've got you, this is awesome. And you're also, you recognize that you don't really know anything. So if you don't really know anything, then you can't be really adamant about saying, I want to know something. You're just like, well, I don't know anything, so if he tells me, I want to understand it anyway. And that's when you actually open yourself up to grasping truth. And we all need to read Surprised by Joy. Surprised by Hope. Surprised by Hope.
Into Right?
Into Right. I think
We can really get in a pattern of trying to keep track of all the evidence of everything that's going on to try to understand what's going on based on information, especially nowadays. And then someone comes along who gives you permission to make nonsense, or they do something theatrical or absurd. It can give you permission to laugh about something that doesn't make any sense, and suddenly everything else seems so absurd that you were worrying about it so seriously, trying to answer things.
Absolutely.
So this idea of someone can give you permission by taking you by the hand and walking you through the creek with your shoes on. I mean, how bad is it anyway if your shoes get wet? But we would never get our shoes wet.
That's right. Exactly.
I think too.
Bam.
I think also the questions, right. Sorry. Okay, so the questions, right. I think, too, for me personally, I've been, because there is this kind of sense in which the questions in my life have made me realize my need for God, my desire for God, because it's kind of like, I'm not okay with it all just being arbitrary. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't think you're suggesting, like, that level of, oh, we don't know and it just doesn't matter, because it does matter. Right, you know what I'm getting at, though? There's kind of like this, I've definitely talked with lots of different people, and some people who, like, just want to know, want the facts data. There's also the side of, like, don't know, doesn't really matter. But I'm like, but it does. Like, it does matter. Like, it does matter why we're here, I believe. So I think, like, there's kind of this balance of being able to know it matters and have that, like, send you on a quest, right, to, like, search and seek out meaning. And that, like, often will take the route of, well, I don't know, maybe for those here, might be through making art or, like, pursuing, reading. Reading is a type of art form. Learning is an art, I guess what I'm saying. Living is an art. So that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you going to say?
Important distinction, and I think you're right. I wasn't saying
No, I
that
didn't
the
think you
person
were.
who isn't obsessed with having to get answers and then missing out on really what is happening. It's a different kind of.
But I understand your point too, and that's an important one.
Yeah, I think the key to what you said was now.
Yeah,
that's this urgency.
This urgency too.
Distance to anything else.
Yeah, I can look at that tree and be like, I wonder why that tree's like it is. And I'm going to go look, and then my appreciation and joy in the tree increases as I discover the truth. That's the key. If you're asking questions and you're wanting to know things about God and the person of Jesus to increase your joy in Him, that's very good. But if you're asking the questions because He didn't answer that prayer the way you wanted, or because you're doubting and things like that, then you're asking it from the wrong place. This is easy to illustrate. If Nick doesn't come here yesterday, I'm like, hey Nick, why didn't you come by yesterday? Am I asking that because I'm worried that Nick doesn't like me and the reason he didn't come by yesterday morning is because he doesn't want to be around me? Or am I asking that simply because I'm curious? Mm-hmm. Only I can know. But if I'm asking it because I think Nick secretly doesn't like me, then what if he says, oh, I just wasn't able to make him, like, he's lying. If he says, oh, I had a class to go to, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And then around lunchtime, he's,
So why weren't you here again yesterday?
Yeah, like, why weren't you here? And then around lunchtime, he leaves at 12. I was like, Nick, you usually stay till 1. Why are you leaving at 12? He's like, well, I have a discussion I need to go to. He's like, you're lying. Everything that he does, I'm interpreting within my lens. And so a lot of times when we ask questions of God, we do a very similar thing. We've already decided God is bad, or God's not there for us, or He's not... There's something wrong with Him. And so we're asking them in a way that we have set the answer, that we've already preset the answer we'll accept. The only answer I'm going to accept from Nick is when he says, because I don't like you. I thought so. Until he says
a non-belief, a total lack of it. Appreciating or wanting to understand the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the truth is, Nick doesn't dislike me at all. And yet, if he says that, I'll never believe him. And this gets into the importance of always asking questions from a mode of trust. And that boils down to a mode of love.
And maybe how much you love yourself.
Yeah, well, that's going to also be tied to it as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, the other thing I want to bring up with this topic is... Well, the image I use a lot is the line and the circle. So the line is linear, point A to B. You know where you're starting, you know where you're ending. The circle has no beginning, it has no end. You don't really know where to get. You can get on where you want to, you can get off where you want to. So for some people that's nerve-wracking because they're like, I don't know where to get on. I don't know where to get off. And it's like you get on or get off wherever you want to.
Which means I have to have my own will.
Exactly. It means you have to have something within yourself and know who you are. So that's difficult for a lot of people.
Just keep driving around the circle.
So it's easy.
Let me get my loud
So yeah, it's easier today for people to accept the linear because Like you're saying, yeah, no, I don't have to think. Oh, tell me how to run my life. Because everybody's looking for these books. It's like, what are the 5 steps to successful life? It's like, I don't know. What do you want out of your life, you know? I can't tell you how to be successful in your life. There's no generic formula for success.
Darn it!
Lies.
So using
The Hydro Collider is close.
So I think that gets very much into like what you're saying about people having to know is this the idea that, you know, people have lost the enjoying the ride, enjoying the dirt journey, and they're so focused on when are we getting there? You know, how long is it going to take us to get there? And it's like you're losing all types of time not enjoying the journey, and when you get there, you're not even happy because
Like I just got to be in New York. Because
Yeah.
New York is a place where I can be the artist that I was meant to be.
exactly.
Right. Make the connections I need. All of this will be okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so,
I'll be okay.
yeah, so I think that gets into the area of relationship, in that, you know, if you think about a relationship, if you put the line and the circle together, a relationship is that. Like, yeah, you reach certain
Yeah, well,
milestones,
yeah.
like, oh, we got to our 25-year anniversary, we got to our 50. Like, you're reaching these milestones, but it doesn't stop. You don't stop having a relationship. It's just continuous with the person. You get to know them. So I think realizing that God created life on the basis of constant knowing, you know, it's cyclical, it's just always going around, will help to get rid of some of that, because it's not about getting to the destination. Because the destination is the two of you. Like you and God, or you and your husband, or whoever's in a relationship, the destination is each other, so to speak. So my friend, she had this good analogy. She was talking with her friend, said, you know, if you were going up this tall mountain with God, and you guys got there in like record time, like he wouldn't really care because you didn't get to know him along the way. You know, that's what he's concerned with, you know.
Concerned about making this record.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Jesus says, you know, like, great, you did all this great stuff. I never knew you, you know.
Right.
He's constantly talking about to know God is the point of life. To know him in his fullness, you know, intimacy is the point of life. Not to like, hey, God, look, I did all this stuff. God's like, yeah, I could do that too. You know, God is not impressed
Right.
with the things you do because he can already do them. He's more concerned with
He wants
how
to
did me and you, you know, how did we connect? You know, all this stuff was happening. So I think that will help to alleviate that anxiety you're talking about, where you're like, what is going to happen with my life? And God is saying, look, let's just go together, and I'll tell you when we get, like this is Abraham. I'll show you when you get there.
Yeah.
Abraham had no A to B mentality because God was like, I'm not telling you. When you stop, that will be it.
I mean, a destination is just is a point on a different road. I think too, we're just sort of trained. We go to school to get to high school. We go to college.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah,
We work to go to retirement. We on earth to go to heaven. It's all a track. So we apply that to everything.
I think too, it's funny. I can remember, you know, bunches of times when I like get to class and I'd hear like fellow classmates being like, so like, what did we need? Like, I read that. What do you think we need to know about like from that? Or like, what do we need to know for the test? What do we need to know? What? Tell me what I need. Tell me what I should think about this.
Yes.
I'm just like,
Tell me what I should think. Tell me when the test is. Tell me what grade I have to make in
Right.
order to pass the class. Tell me how many credits I have to take in order to graduate this time so I could go to
Yeah.
this job and do this thing.
Tell me what I need to
Right.
look for to find someone to marry. Tell me what I need to look for to get a job. Tell me. It's all like.
well, and
Tell me
then,
what
and
I
I
need
think,
to have so I can support this amount of people and have this kind of power.
right.
Where's
and-
my cheese?
And,
And the wine!
yes.
Sorry.
No, it's true, and I think there's this interesting sense that like somebody could very much feel justified in being like, yeah, but you don't get it. Like we have to do these things, or like you know, it's kind of like, well, we have to, and it's like, you know, you do and you don't. I mean, it's kind of like just, and this is why I kind of like remember what you choose to say. You know, like I guess it's just kind of like you don't have to do it. I mean, you do if you said you would. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about what you're saying you're going to do and be like, yes, I want to do that. Because remember the cost of it. You know, remember what it's going to mean for you. And, but yeah, I just think that's like, you know, I don't want to like get out the soapbox on education, but I think that
Let's get
Not
on
tonight.
it. Let's get on it.
It's not good.
Go anywhere else tonight, right?
I don't want to go there again.
You've already been?
We can get off wherever we want.
You don't even know we're not.
How do you know, Nick? We haven't told you when you could get off.
oh. And I just kind of made me think like, wait, we should be able to think for ourselves. We should be able to and that's why it also is sometimes frustrating when you're like, you have an idea for a thesis and it's like, but how can you support that? And it's like, I can support it because I'm creating this idea.
Right.
That is like, that's what is the proof for it.
No, you're supposed to go and read other people's papers and find their ideas and then recycle them.
Who's based on someone else's ideas and so on and so forth.
Yes, and then you will make
Don't
better
you want to
grades
be a
that way.
scholar? Don't you want to think for yourself? Don't you want an A?
Don't you want tenure?
Don't you love? Don't you love your family?
Yeah, that could go.
It gets tied in there.
could go there.
It all gets tied in there.
So I just wanted to bring that up.
So the last two things I wanted to wrap it up with.
Wrap it up.
Wrap, yo, we're gonna wrap it up because that's a wrap.
A point on identity and a point on play. I'm trying to remember the identity one now. What was the identity one?
We need an app to wrap.
We need an app for our identity. Can we sell that? And people will buy it.
Identity app! ID app! Get your ID today.
I forgot my identity point.
Remember.
I'm trying.
Our identity isn't wrapped up in like getting from A to B and being this thing.
A to B.
What is that
circles.
relationship with God?
Yeah, that was.
What was it? It was a good one on identity. What were you just saying, Michelle?
I was saying about classes. I was saying about like, I've heard a lot about, needing, what do we need to know?
Thinking for yourself.
Thinking for yourself.
All right. Well, maybe I'll think of the
A to
identity
B
one.
circle.
All right. So the point on play, I think one, is going back to this linear versus circle diagram. This is one reason the culture we live in now, which is solely focused on how to get from A to B, how do I do this, then I get this, and formula, is the reason why play is also trivialized, because there is no point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you do something else, like when you get a job, it's like, I know the objective. I go from home, I go to work, I did my job. That was the point. When you create art, it's more of the circle, because it's like, why did you do that? Are you going to sell it? Or is it going to become famous? It's like, if it doesn't
Are
have...
you published or like?
Exactly.
Are you
If it
getting
does,
there? Are you
if people
trying?
can't see the end goal, if people can't see the end goal, then it has no validity in their eyes. I can't remember if this was the exact point I was going to make, but it works. So I mean, being made in God's image, it's similar. Like he does things because he wants to. Like his end goal is himself. Why do I want to do this? Because I, God, want to. That is all the point he needs. So likewise, we're made in his image. Like, why do I want to create this? Because I want to. Because it will, in the end, do what I want it to do. So like you were just saying, like, or one of you two were just saying, like, you're creating a paper based off your own observations. Because as you're doing it, you're creating it. It's never been done before. Like, your identity is wrapped up in God's image, and that everything we do is creating. Everything is an act of creativity to the point it can't be linked to anything else to a certain degree, because you just made it up. There is no foundation other than your own ideas and who you think you are and what you want to do. So nobody can tell you who to be, because only you and God can figure that out. So I can't read a book and tell me, oh, Bernard, you're supposed to start this art thing and then you're supposed to release this album, because I have to create that. Who I think I am and myself is the only person who can do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I can think of the other thing while you...
I think because you have an artistically illiterate society, it is unable to call something excellent without someone saying at a publishing company or what have you that's excellent. We're not educated enough in the arts to verify or to value something without an authority. So we're very reliant. Whenever you lack education, you rely on authority. And that whenever you lack education, you rely on an authority to give a thing value to you. Education is a way that you come to learn how to value given things.
At the same time, though, I think that the education system often makes you rely on somebody telling you.
Right.
It's a type of authority, like
Yeah,
The intrinsic motivation is it's a little bit difficult to foster in the schooling.
Well, that's a lack of an education in your identity. That's a lack of knowing who you are and able to self-motivate yourself to go into particular fields of interest. So they have to give you general requirements. So you go and try a bunch of things, and then you find something you like and go on it. But then in that thing you like, you don't even know what to do in that field that you like. They have to assign particular books and tell you to do this and that, and if they don't give you a book to read, you don't read it, because you don't know how to value it unless it's part of the assignment. The other thing I was going to say is I think the absurdity per se of play and art and all of that, and the kind of confidence you have to do it would be very similar to how absurd it would have been had Moses come to Egypt and you're like, so who sent you? I am. Okay, I know you are. You're right there. What do you mean? I am. I've been like, what is this guy? This guy's crazy. And that's what God told him to sent them, right? I mean, how crazy would it be to be asserting, I am sent me?
Right.
Likewise, when you make your art, you're saying, I am. That's why I did it. I exist. I matter. And simultaneously, my existence is married to the existence of the Word. And these things go hand in hand together. That's a very bold claim, and that's the only thing that can free people from Egypt.
Yeah, really fast. I guess I'm just saying, I'm like sometimes we've forgotten how to value things. Like it feels a little bit more or like, oh, I should do this and this is productive because somebody assigned it to me. Mm-hmm. If we go and read a book, it's like, now I'm just being lazy because somehow, I was telling you today, like somehow it's like this gotten into my mind, I guess, from school or I don't know what, but that like if I wasn't assigned it, then I'm not using my time well if I just sit and read.
Yeah, that's
and it's so crazy.
This false guilt just follows you around because you're not being productive.
Yes.
And you're actually just a lazy person who wants to do whatever you want to do.
Exactly.
Instead of what somebody else wants you to do, because that's more valid.
Yeah, and
or valid at all.
Jesus told you to be selfless. So if you're doing what you want to do, then you're not doing what Jesus wants you to do, and you're not being like Jesus. If you truly were a Christian, you would do what the boss told you to do. You would die to yourself, to your boss. So you don't believe in Jesus. Because you read that book.
Probably not, you're right. Yeah.
All right, last 3 things, then it'll be a wrap. One, on play. If you think about it, the most secure people are awfully the most playful ones because they are so secure. Mm-hmm. So to think of God as playful is perfectly fine because he realizes that he's God to the point where he's like, okay, I got it. I don't have to think about this, 24/7. I can relax. I know I'm in control so much that I can play.
God's so strong that he can die on a cross.
Right. It's a game to him. He's like, great, I'll die on the cross, I'll get up, game over.
Game begun, over.
So what you were saying, I thought of the other point, which was, well, I did that with my eyes. The second point, you were just talking about, somebody else telling you to do something, which is definitely not in God's image because when God created something, he had no outside input. He wasn't asking questions like, should I make Earth? Should I create something? It's like everything.
What will this be graded on the test?
Yeah, exactly. Everything was an internal will from the inside outward. Only he could converse with himself and know what he wanted to do. So likewise, if you're waiting for somebody in life to tell you how to think, how to read, what to do, you're not acting in the God-like image because God is only self-directed. Only directed from self, from within.
That's selfish, though. You're so selfish.
And finally, the identity thing, this was related to what you were saying about, saying things are not important. Like you could just not do things in your life.
And I was like, it just doesn't matter. Why think about it?
Right.
Right?
Because my friend Kevin, he made a really good point that he's like, if you think about life is simultaneously serious and kind of not so serious. It's like if you don't do anything with the rest of your life, God will still love you. He'll still completely see you as his child. He's not going to penalize you. You're not going to lose that unconditional love. But from your own point of view, and a little bit from God's point of view, he'll be like, look, you could have done that. That would have been great. So he's not upset. He's really disappointed for you. He's disappointed that you didn't fulfill your own potential, and he knows how good happy you would have been. It's not like he's like, dang, stupid Daniel didn't fulfill his potential. He's like, it's your life. Do what you want. Do something or do nothing. So I think looking at that in identity. So yeah, we'll bring it back to identity just because I think that's the basis for everything. So yeah, you can do the rest of your life. You can never create anything. You can never write anything. You can sit in this chair for the rest of your life, and God's like, I love you forever, done. Because it's not based on you; it's based upon me. So it's really dependent on what you want to do. So if you have that rock solid,
You still have to pay the rent.
Not if you sit in that chair.
yeah, I mean you have
Sit in that
to
chair.
pay the rent. That has nothing to do with you being loved, though.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like it.
Doesn't matter. It's not based on you. It's based on God. He loves you because He is love. So if you have that mentality that God is just always looking at you, forever loving you, and you can just sit there.
But I think it might be the part about doing what you want to do. That could be the part that the rent comes in, right, Rachel?
I was just interrupting rudely, I'm sorry.
But it's a real practical point.
I mean, I happen to suffer from anxiety, and it's hard for me to remember that God always loves me when I feel crappy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ultimate point I'm just making, though, is that having your security and your identity settled and, like, finally dealt with, like, this is the way it is. God loves me, period. All of the stuff that comes out of that, like I'm going to write a paper, I'm going to do whatever, is completely free from that because you realize no matter what, it's like, oh, wait, if God loves me, then it doesn't really matter what I do. But because I know He loves me, I do want to do well. You know, it's like once you get that, then that cycle starts going. But we have it reversed in culture now where it's like, I got an A on my test, and Mom smiled and jumped for joy. When I get a D, she was angry. So do good things, Mom is happy. Do bad things, Mom is not happy. I'm going to do good things.
Trying to please.
So yeah, so you're motivated out of the reward versus being secure on, I can do whatever I want, and my mom is going to love me. And because my mom loves me, I want to do well. You know, so you got to get that cycle going.
Well, that's how you get the balance of faith and works.
Right.
You know, that's how you get it together.
All right, good discussion.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a fun and engaging night at Christian Artists Anonymous. Join us next week at Tuesday, 6 o'clock, as we dive further into Steve Turner's books and the wonders of Jesus Christ.
So chapter 5.
Yes, next week.
I want to call now. Now that you mentioned it that way.
Next week. I'll just tell you now.
A 1-800 number.
Next week, chapter 5, the Bible.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good chapter.
Thank you all for
Y'all have a
coming.
great week.